All right, hello everybody. I think it's about time to get started. So my name is James Rector, and I am one of the founders of Truth Teacher Services. I'm here with my business partner Matt Devine, and so we're going to both be here talking to you about teaching in Korea and China, and we're going to discuss a couple different ways, a couple different types of teachers that might go abroad, those that are certified teachers teaching K through 12 subjects, as well as those who are interested in teaching English abroad. A few things here at the beginning, house cleaning. If you have any questions, and I hope you do, I really hope you do, just go ahead and click the chat button on the left side of the screen. It's going to be that blue mark that you can see at the top left of the screen when you hover your mouse over. And type your question into the chat, and at the end of the webinar, we're just going to go over all of those questions, and we're going to try to get to the most important, most pertinent, most asked questions. And as we go through this, feel free to type anything in there. We'll kind of keep track of it. We cannot hear you. You can hear us. Try to stay muted just for the sake of clean conversation. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Matt to get started.
Okay, so welcome everybody. We are happy to have you here, and we're going to talk first about some of the benefits of teaching abroad. So I believe one or two people might actually be abroad, so they can attest to some of these things. But one of the biggest benefits of going abroad, and we want you to all focus on and be aware of, is professional and personal growth. For many of you, this might be the first teaching or job opportunity after graduation. It's definitely an opportunity with salary, benefits, and so many different things to enjoy while you're abroad. If everybody kind of just takes a minute and looks at all these different photos, you can see some of the opportunities that you can take part in. All the delicious new foods, different students that you'll come across and learn to love the work with every day, language acquisition, flying different places on vacation, being able to save, being able to take part in food groups, martial arts and dances of where you'll go, and of course on some journeys of a lifetime that you'll never forget. So that is definitely something to know. Of course, a lot of people want to know about the benefits specifically. They want to know, is it true? Do you really get a salary? Do you get airfare, either one way or round trip, depending on the kind of school? Do you get accommodation, your free apartment? So all these things are true with the schools that we work with and some of our best benefits. So we'll just hit on the salary a little bit because, of course, everybody wants to know what you'll get paid. So the salaries really do vary for where you're going. We can speak a little bit in regards to China first. China, the salary varies a lot. So you can start, believe it or not, making anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000 a month. Some of you might be thinking, wow, only $1,000? But those are salaries working very minimal hours and still being sponsored by a visa. The cost of living is also a lot cheaper and a lot lower, so you can save anywhere from $700 a month, or maybe even more, with a very cheap and affordable cost of living in certain parts of China. Now, in more metropolitan areas of China, the salaries tend to be a little bit higher, closer to $2,000 a month. You also are provided accommodation, but cost of living is a little bit more. Now, you could actually work, I believe maybe one teacher is interested in working and qualified to work and teach in an international school if you have 2 years of teaching experience at home in a specific content area. For example, secondary science. You can make a salary upwards of $3,000 to $4,000 a month, depending on the school and location. Now we'll briefly touch on Korea. With Korea, you can expect to make anywhere between $1,800 a month, upwards of $2,400 or more, depending on the hours that you work and location as well. So last kind of point, how much can you save? If you are someone who really likes to focus on savings and still live a reasonable life while you're abroad, anywhere between around 60% you can save. If you're an average type of person and maybe you want to save a little bit, you can expect to save around 30%. Maybe you just want to go abroad, have an amazing time, spend all the money that you have in a year, and just really enjoy every part, and you're not concerned about savings, then it doesn't matter. But it all depends on the person you are and what your goals are. So now we'll talk about life as an expat teacher.
And actually, I remember Matt, one of my friends in my first year abroad, he considered it a failure if he actually came out of the year with any money saved up instead of having splurged it around traveling around Southeast Asia. So I definitely know the mindset can kind of sway based on who we're talking to.
Exactly.
And so life as an expat teacher is obviously a special consideration. And it's something that a lot of people are enticed by, and it's a kind of romantic option after college, becoming an expat, going abroad. A few things that always come up in people's minds. Do I need to speak the language? Let me just talk about that really quickly first. The short answer is no. The long answer is no, but we really think that if you're going to go abroad and you're going to try to insert yourself into a new culture, and if you want to do that, we assume that you want to absorb some of that culture, and therefore you should want to learn the language. We really truly think that before you go, and yeah, Matt, you kind of do a little if you could with that control room. And so before you go abroad, we think that you should put a little effort into finding a study guide or a study partner, even better, and get some of the basics of the language down so that you can land on day one and you can start making a fool of yourself immediately and you can start absorbing it by week 2. And that really is kind of how you have to go about it if you're learning a new language from scratch. Be ready to make a fool of yourself. The second thing that a lot of people wonder about, perhaps in the back of their minds, is safety. Going abroad, how safe is it? And because we work in multiple countries, but this talk specifically is about Korea and China, I will generalize to say that both of these countries are safer than the United States. And I went ahead and pulled up some statistics on it, and you can kind of see a color-coded graph of countries and their safety index. It's basically a global peace index. If you take a close look at where South Korea is there, you can see that it is literally one of the safest countries on Earth. And China is perhaps not as high up there as Korea, but it's definitely better than the United States in terms of crime index. And both of these places, if you speak to expat teachers, you will hear the same thing. They are very safe places, and be a smart expat when you go abroad. Make sure that you register with your Secretary of State, know the embassy where it is nearby you, have emergency contact information when you're landing for the first time, know who you're going to be going to meet. But otherwise, these are very safe places that we're recruiting for.
James, I'd just like to hit on one story in particular.
Go ahead.
I actually had, when I first taught overseas, this was actually in Seoul, and I'll never forget it, I saw 2 little boys, they must have been about 10 years old, on the subway by themselves. And maybe they were a little bit older than 10, but they were riding the subway, and they saw an older lady on the subway, and it was quite crowded. And the older lady kind of was communicating with them, and I could tell that they were alone, and they were riding the subway by themselves. It was during the day, and it wasn't a big deal. In our country, obviously, it's kind of a big deal if you see that happening because you ask where are your parents. But it was very natural. Like the kids knew where they were going. Their parents were okay with it. They're probably a little bit older than 10, but definitely not high school. I can tell you that. So that was a very interesting story. And then another interesting story about safety. Very quickly, we have a lot of big reactions usually, especially on our news, to things that are happening in North Korea, for example, and that's usually one of the biggest questions. What's it like being in South Korea with the threat of North Korea? Well, I had a teacher one time that mentioned to me last year, I think it was a year and several months ago, they were discussing the big threat of North Korea trying to attack the South and potentially the United States. So this teacher said they had family members calling them, asking how they're doing, if they're evacuating, and they were so surprised at their family members' reactions in the state when in South Korea everybody was relaxed, laid back. It was just another typical threat from North Korea that they've been dealing with for the past 50 years. So it was just interesting to hear that, for sure.
Yeah, and just to let some new people who just joined know, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat. The little blue chat icon is on the upper left of your screen, and you can chat on the right. So please, leave your questions there. So I'll just kind of continue. One other thing that some people might be concerned about teaching abroad by is that you're abroad, that you might be perhaps losing touch with friends and family and loved ones. And you have to keep in mind that this is a short period of your life. It's going to go a lot faster than you think. And what you want to do is maintain relationships, right? That's what you want. That's what you want, even though you're abroad. And I think we all know that there are tools out there to do it. You just need to start before you actually go abroad. These are some screenshots of one of our teachers who's currently overseas, and he's in China, as you might be able to tell from those images. And he has a blog in which he writes about his travels, his daily work, his work with his students. So he writes about his personal life and his professional life. And he, through this blog, family members back home, friends back home can keep in touch with him. They can understand what he's doing. And he obviously has Skype to make calls. We're using Google Hangouts right here. There's many ways these days to stay in very good touch, very interactive, good touch with friends and family back home. So that's something that, if you're truly concerned about it, please talk to us. Go ahead and email us, contact us. You can leave a question here, and we'll talk about it later as well, about how you might want to stay in touch with people back home. And the last thing that a lot of expat teachers experience is culture shock. And you might be worried about it, saying, well, can I handle it? And culture shock definitely has a few different phases. As soon as you arrive, you're initially very excited. You're feeling the euphoria of being in a new country, new place. Everything's exciting. Everything's new. After a couple months, after a few months, it's usually called the 3-month dip. You perhaps feel a little bit irritated by a few of these new things that you don't quite understand, and you think that perhaps something that is done differently is better. You will gradually enter that third stage of adjustment. Right? You've made it through the hardest part. You want, the crisis is averted. You're starting to feel like these things are part of your everyday existence, and eventually the goal, obviously, is that fourth phase of culture shock, which is adaptation, biculturalism. You really want, and that's the goal of going abroad. You want to feel at home in this new culture. Even if you're not able to learn the language fluently in 1 year, you want to feel like you have a very good understanding of how to communicate with the people and how to work and live successfully in that society. There's definitely going to be some other challenges you might face, professional challenges like being an employee in a new culture. An example of this might be shaking hands versus bowing. You might face some personal challenges, east and west, personal friendships, relationships. You might notice that different things are important to different societies in terms of friendships and meeting new people. For example, age and gender, they might be more emphasized, the differences. Combating homesickness combating these challenges and potential homesickness is very important for expats when they're abroad, especially in the first few months. And that's why, as part of our program with Truth Teacher Services, we try to encourage you to join some groups and do some activities and have these planned out from day one before you go. So, joining language groups, having a language partner, perhaps looking up local sports teams, cooking classes, taking art classes at the local university is something, having travel itineraries planned beforehand. All of these things are ways to kind of keep you on track towards your goal, your year-long goal of eventual adaptation and personal and professional growth. Matt, why don't you take it away? Talk a little about the work in the classroom atmosphere.
Absolutely. Guys, thanks so much for your questions. We look forward to answering them at the end, and we keep them coming. So I'd like to mention a little bit about work in classroom atmosphere, but just to finish up what James was saying about these different groups, there are so many. It's one of the biggest fears, guys, that people have. Who am I going to meet, and what am I going to do? I understand I might be working with other teachers at the school, but if you're wondering, well, what can I do in the meantime while I'm waiting to apply, if I can't apply yet, start researching these different groups and things that you can do, Ask us questions about some hobbies that you have and things that you enjoy and maybe want to do, and you'll be surprised with some of the things that you'll be able to find. So about work and classroom atmosphere, you'll see a couple interesting pictures of two different teachers. So in contrast, you see this teacher on the left, and he's kind of just taking it easy, and this teacher on the right, he's really seeming to put in some effort and really work hard and keep the kids attentive and engaged. And we like to discuss with teachers this 50-50 complex, especially teachers who have studied education, and you know how serious we take it in the States, even students, that you guys are, a lot of you right now, looking to, as this is an opportunity to be a teacher. You'll notice, it might come as a shock abroad, that you might come across people who are very serious, and they're doing an awesome job. They're professional people, but they're also having a great experience outside of the classroom. And then you meet people abroad, and you might come across them, and you might say, how did these people get jobs teaching? It's kind of laughable in a way. Who hired them? Who is desperate enough to hire them? So they're really not the best representations of people from our country in the West as native English speakers. So basically, it's not good to be around people that don't help you develop, that don't encourage you, people that don't take what they do seriously, because you do have to remember, biggest reason you're going is because of this job. It is this opportunity. Everything that comes with it is wonderful, and you should take full advantage. But just remember, it is a job. You do get paid a salary and benefits for it, so you should take it seriously. So be the good 50%. Also, a lot of people always want to know about the lessons preparation. It's like, well, I've never taught before. How do I prepare a lesson? How much do I have to prepare? And it all depends. It all depends if you're teaching in an ESL school versus a K-12 international school. When you're teaching ESL and it's your first position out of school, potentially your first experience ever teaching, the teachers working at the school and the administration, they don't expect you to be this super experienced teacher. They just hope that you have a great personality, you love working with kids, and that you're adaptable and you're trainable and you're excited to improve your craft of teaching. Obviously, for K-12 schools, for more experienced teachers, expect lesson planning that you would be used to at home. Kind of a lot busier than what you're used to. But for ESL schools and training schools, a lot of the lessons are kind of prepared in a way in books and textbooks that you use with the kids. You can implement a little bit more creativity, but in all, there's a lot less play. Also, a big thing you have to understand before you're going abroad is the whole kind of teaching toward the students and the culture. You have to realize, you're not teaching in America. You're working with students who are so similar to American kids in certain ways, and then very different in other ways. So, for example, James and I always like to talk about the whole saving face type of kind of making sure that you're not yelling directly at students, for example, that you're not judging them immediately. We'll also talk about a story about plagiarism and how different that is. But you have to be very careful in how you approach and working with the Korean teacher at the school, and just making sure you're taking a good approach and not, hey, I'm always right, I'm the teacher.
I'll give a quick example that you were mentioning there, Matt. About plagiarism. I was meeting with a lot of principals over in Shanghai at various very nice private and public schools, and they were describing their best foreign teachers to me and their most difficult, most challenging foreign teachers to me. And one of the most common themes that kept coming up amongst all of these principals was the same thing about teachers that were difficult to work with, not being flexible, not being willing to learn and want to learn and absorb a new educational culture. And one of the worst or best examples, I don't know, it depends on how you kind of want to view this, but one of the examples of this was a teacher at Beijing No. 4 High School, which is one of the top high schools in the country. One of these foreign teachers who was there teaching the AP levels for kids that wanted to go back to America for college, he failed a student who plagiarized something in one of his final papers. And the school and the parents were shocked. They were in an uproar. They came storming in, demanding that the grade be changed, blah blah blah. And this teacher just didn't realize, and it ended poorly for this teacher and the school. You know, it was just a bad situation because the teacher wasn't willing to bend on this ideal of plagiarism. And plagiarism, when I first heard this story, I was kind of shocked. I said, well, yeah, he plagiarized. This kid plagiarized. He should have been punished. But it's a cultural thing as well, and this teacher perhaps did not realize it at the time. And it's not as bad over there. I'll just say it very, very plainly, very bluntly like that. It's not as bad over in China. And I'll also say that for Korea because I taught in Korea for a long time too. So that's just an example of something where you need to be flexible. You need to learn what is important to your boss, your principal, your school, and how best to help your students. You know, make them understand what you think about this and the culture that they're probably going to be going into over in America. Okay, enough about that. Matt, can I talk about some locations and requirements? I assume so.
Absolutely, go for it, James.
Yeah. Okay, so this is going to be a little mix of locations and requirements because these requirements might change depending on your location. So let me just start at the beginning. Everybody, everywhere, in order to teach abroad, you need two things. Number one, you need to speak native English. And there are some exceptions to that. I'm going to mention that in a second. But basically, you need to speak native English. And number two, you need to have your bachelor's degree. And you could have your bachelor's degree. For example, if you're in school right now and you're interested in starting at the beginning of summer or at the end of summer, that is possible. That's possible. But you need a bachelor's degree. You need to be a native English speaker. One of the exceptions for this is that you can be a non-native speaker for a quantitative subject, sciences or maths, if you have an excellent track record and excellent teaching experience and excellent credentials behind you for that subject. So that's the only exception for the native English speaker. Furthermore now, if you're interested in teaching preschool, early childhood, or K-12 subject classes, this will probably be at private schools or international schools. In these situations, no matter where you are, you need 2 years of experience in your subject area, and you need a teaching certificate. Okay? And the teaching certificate obviously needs to be in that subject area. Now, there are exceptions. If you have a master's degree or a PhD, if you have a very high qualification and you have something that shows that you have great mastery over the subject, and you're able to show these schools that you have a very good teacher's personality, and we help you do that through your video profiles, then the school is willing to make an exception. And they're willing to say, okay, they don't need 2 years of experience because they have this master's degree. We can get past that with the immigration office. And if you're interested in teaching English, just ESL in general, you don't need past experience. You don't need any experience. You could teach coming right out of college. In fact, that's what I did. 8 years ago, that's what I did. You should have a TEFL certificate, all right? You see that in the bottom right, that picture, TEFL, T-E-F-L, Teach English as a Foreign Language, and we can give you a link to a discounted TEFL course that we have a partnership with. Matt, if you have it with you, could you type that link into the chat area when you have a chance? I do want to say something about the experience required for ESL, for teaching English. In Korea, you don't need any experience. In China, it depends on the location. And also, if you're interested in teaching English, and you're considering between China and Korea, I want you to consider this. Korea is a very crowded market. There are tons of teachers there. Lots of English programs have been shut down by the government recently, causing a, large influx or outflux of teachers from the system. And therefore, this market is crowded. Schools have all the power there. Schools are able to pick and choose who they want. And therefore, getting a job in Korea, especially in a location, in a preferred location like Central Seoul, and having salary requirements for it, if you're really thinking like that, you're going to find it difficult. China is the new Korea, if you want to think, if you know the ESL market very well. You know, Korea was kind of the king of the ESL market for a long time. China is now that place. There are so many people, so many wealthy people in China that want their kids to learn English from an early age. So China is kind of the new place where if you want to be a teacher and you have a location preference, you're going to find it much easier to find a job there, especially a job at a school that's going to value you, you know, who really wants you there and knows that you're making a choice to go there, not that they can just go out and find any teacher that they want like they could in Korea, perhaps. So I just want to say that. And if you're interested in teaching in a large city in China, like Beijing or Shanghai, these are the first-tier cities, you know, the really well-known ones, you're going to need those 2 years of experience for ESL. But if you don't have any experience, or even if you only have 1 year of experience, you can still teach English in China at one of the second or third tier cities. And if you might be thinking, oh, second tier city, third tier, what is that? Rural, kind of boondocks, you know, way outside the major metropolises, you would be incorrect. Many of these second tier cities have over 10 million people. Many of the third tier cities have a few million people. So these are very large, modern places, and there's just so many cities, so many people in China. It's a growing, happening place. A lot of people want to be there. Obviously, the language is very valuable to know, so it's a good place to go. I hope that that kind of helps you understand the qualifications and the experience requirements for the various locations and school types. I'll go over your question. If you have any questions about it, please type it in. We'll go over them at the end. I'm going to pass off to Matt one more time. We're going to go over some timelines and application deadlines.
Yeah, so let's talk about applications and the importance of having documents ready. So let's talk about the trickiest, the more particular country first with Korea, in that a lot of schools, as James was alluding to a little bit, Korea is a little bit more saturated, so they do have the ability to be more particular with the applicants that they have coming in. They want applicants that have documents in hand, ready to go. So if you're interviewing a couple months before you're trying to teach overseas, in Korea specifically, you really do have to have your documents in hand. If you want to teach in Korea and you want to start applying, you really can't apply until around May and June for a late August placement. But guys, that's one of the best times to go to Korea or to China, at the end of August and in the summer. Same thing for international schools. But for Korea specifically, they really want you to be on top of your documents. And we don't expect you to worry to remember this, or to worry about it right now. But having your background check, so your national background check, whether you're American, Canadian, wherever you're from, you need to have that in order and apply for it as soon as possible. It needs to be less than 6 months old. A lot of teachers ask, oh, hey, I had that taken care of. I used it for student teaching or something along those lines. It needs to be a very recent check. It needs to be within 6 months by the time you arrive. So if you're applying for it now, you have to be placed and in country within 6 months, or else that check will expire. Same thing with a check for China, but you have to have that background check ready on the state level. So that's a lot nicer. So you can essentially go into a local police station, get fingerprints. You can call ahead and see where a local station is in your neighborhood, but all you need is a state level check by the state you reside in. So state level check for China, federal level check for Korea. The federal level checks you can get expedited, and we can kind of recommend a good way to do that. That's what we're here for. We're here to help you do things easier and faster. But it could take, if you get it standard processing, it could take 1 to 2 months to do. So when we speak with you one-on-one, we can describe that process much more in detail, and we can also send you the link to read all about it. So just remember the check, Korea versus China, it's the federal level versus state. The rest of the documentation is a lot easier. Just those checks are the most important. You have to have diploma, transcripts, and other different things, but we can kind of get you on track with those. Not to worry right now. So with the application period, you might wonder, well, when are there jobs? When can I be placed? So if you're looking to be placed in Korea for this August, so essentially end of summer, start of fall semester, you want to apply. You can start to interview essentially with us around May and June. You want to have all your documents in hand, so you can essentially interview, get a contract offer, and send your documents over as quickly as possible. For China, now you can interview earlier for China if you're interested in teaching in China right now. And we understand, especially those of you who are in school and you're like, I would love to start this process now. Like, we are starting to look for jobs right now. Well, you can start that process and start interviewing right now. Like I said, there's more job opportunities, different types of jobs in various cities. So you can start that now. Korea, you have to be a little bit more patient. You have to wait until around May. Now, for international schools, if you're qualified to teach at an international school, you have your 2+ years of experience in your content area. If we have positions that are suitable for your content area that are open, you can start right now. They start as early as December and January for the upcoming August. So that's basically what the initial required application process looks like, and we refer you for interviews as soon as you're ready.
Sorry about that. I should have changed that slide. I bet. Excellent criminal background check. So let's just go over a few closing notes here. We're going to follow up with all of you via email, and we hope that you'll be interested in getting started on the process. Enter your questions that you have as you're thinking right now just into this chat box. We're going to go over a few of them right now. And if some of you need to leave, no problem. This was a nice, quick, kind of short webinar. We hope it piqued your interest and that it makes you want to get in touch with us after we email you tomorrow. So enter any questions that you have left on your mind. Matt, shall we just kind of start going through these? I think the first one is from Jeffrey. In fact, how about this, Matt? I'll read them out and you can answer them, okay?
Sounds great.
All right, so this first one was from Jeffrey. He said, how many different international schools do you work with in China and Korea?
So, Jeff, specifically with China and Korea, we work with probably over 10 schools, and that changes almost every week as far as international schools. We categorize international schools with big private schools and big, meaning large international schools that are technically considered private schools, and also boarding schools. So picture this. In America, we have private schools, we have big charter schools. I'm not talking about ones, I'm talking about very expensive charter schools where you pay very expensive tuitions to attend these schools on beautiful campuses. So essentially they're private schools. And they are either international schools, either American, or, for example, an Australian IB international school. There are about 10 or more and counting that we currently work with in China. Now, Korea, we work with a couple foreign language schools. They're more so directed towards high school, and they're not K-12 subject-specific schools. So I hope that, in a sense, answers your question for those international schools.
Yeah, so then I just want to emphasize China is the main place where there's international job placements. It's very, very difficult, very, very small market for international schools in Korea. It's basically Central Seoul, and all of those schools have a very, very small rate of acceptance for people applying there because there's just so many teachers there. So we mainly focus on China. We have relationships with lots of international schools there. I personally was visiting about 20 of these international schools in Shanghai and Beijing last year at this time. So, and these are great schools. These are very nice schools, extremely high tuitions, and as a result, very great facilities and very good staff. So yeah, we have very good international schools in China. I'll specifically just kind of end on that.
Yeah. In addition, we have an international school in Vietnam that we work quite closely with as well, the American International School.
Yeah, he's a great principal in Vietnam. Steve Jordan, he's a great guy. Great guy.
Yes, yes. So, like James said, we're in touch with a lot of these, about 10 to 12 active schools that we're actually working with right now, and those are international school specific.
Yeah.
The number is much, much higher for ESL opportunities.
Much higher. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we can talk in detail about those one-on-one if you're interested in hearing about those types of opportunities.
Yeah, and we also have K through 12 opportunities in Turkey through a school program that we work with that sets up schools there with American curricula. So Turkey and Vietnam are other options if you're interested in teaching K through 12 in your subject area. Next question was from Emily. She said, let's see, are we able to teach for different amounts of time? How about 6 months, 9 months, 1 year, etc.?
So this question gets asked somewhat frequently. We have opportunities to work either on 12-month or 2-year contracts, with some exceptions, and I'll get into them. So the first is the very standard and the most common 12-month contract. Every ESL school wants to sign you to a minimum of 12 months. Usually you have 2 weeks of paid vacation, just like any job here in the States that's not teacher related, business for example. So that's basically the schedule you're teaching all throughout the year with those types of vacation times and 15 plus national holiday vacations that kind of turn into mini vacations. So those are the most standard, the 1-year contract. Some international schools and boarding schools will allow you to sign a 1-year contract, although they really, really would like you to sign 2 because they do invest more in you, and they want you to stay for a little longer. So the other opportunities are for 2 months, like I just mentioned, for international schools. However, we do have some exceptions, as James will tell you, the style of academy that he taught at, which was an SAT prep school, they are known to sign summer contracts where you can go and teach. You really have to be a graduate of a top 25 university ranked in the United States because they want you to teach test prep. It's not our requirements, it's their requirements. So you can teach kind of summer session if you would meet those requirements, and if you, of course, want to teach SAT and test prep. Some of you might say, there's no way I would ever want to do that. So, consider that. As far as 6 months contracts, 6 months is extremely rare. The only time you'd ever be signed on a 6-month contract is in a very rare situation. For example, our school program that has programs, our American school program out of Minnesota that has a program in China as well as Turkey, they're looking for a teacher to sign a 6-month contract. They're also giving this teacher incentives for a full-time placement elsewhere with their program in another location for a year. So that's a kind of exception. Also, very often teachers, I've heard this many times, I've spoke with teachers many times who have done this, they have actually received 6-month contracts filling in for a teacher and going until the end of the year and then renegotiating for a longer contract. So in summary, I hope that answered your question, but the most common contracts are just 12 months to 24 months. So if you can't teach a minimum of 12 months, you have to commit to at least 12, or else we really can't help you.
And let's try to go in depth on some of these topics via email. If you want to follow up with us about this specific question, go ahead and follow up with us. We'll try to give you some quick points here. Let's see. The next question was from Katie. Katie said, to work in a private school in the subject, are they looking for 2 years of full-time teaching in a school, or 2 years of experience in a school or education setting? Interesting. I will be graduating in May over the course of 4 years. Yeah. Okay, so it hasn't been 2 full years in a row of full-time teaching. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, so Katie, the short answer is unfortunately no. They will not accept this as 2 years because they're looking. You have to remember you're competing against other teachers, for the same position. It's not like here in the States, but it's definitely still can be competitive. The only minor exception, here's an example. We had a teacher from a very well-to-do university in the Philadelphia area who graduated with a degree in secondary English education. The school needed an English teacher to start at the beginning of August. It was their last couple of teachers to fulfill their hiring needs. Now, on paper, that teacher technically doesn't have 2 years of teaching experience in his content area. But they looked at, they interviewed him probably once or twice or multiple times. They really liked him. They got a great recommendations from his cooperating teacher when he was student teaching. So that's kind of an exception. English, science, math, those subjects are very high in demand as well. So it depends, but the short answer is unless you have that experience after your certification, after student teaching, they're going to look at that as a requirement that you didn't fulfill.
But and can I just say also, this is kind of a question for you as well, Matt. Like, would they, if somebody was a biology major and they had 1 year of biology experience and some other work experience, does the school look at that and say, well, this person is proficient enough and mastered enough in that subject area that we will consider it good enough? Do you think that that's how schools think? Is that their mindset?
The short answer, I mean, again, one of our, and you might have seen in the slides that James kind of hit on people with a master's degree in, for example, biology, a PhD in biology or physics or something like that. You really have to have a postgraduate degree for them to consider you to teach. And they really do want to see like many years of tutoring or unofficial teaching experience. But those are at, for example, public or private high schools. They're not at international schools. So it is a little bit different. You get paid less. But by and large, it's very, very difficult to get you a position teaching that subject in an international type school. So it's very challenging.
I will say, just in the future, perhaps not right now with the schools that we work with, the international schools we work with, but in the future we're going to be working with international schools in smaller cities in China specifically that are going to need teachers. It's hard to retain teachers if you're not one of those major four, or major first-tier cities, because they all know that when teachers think, hey, I want to teach abroad, they start naming places that they know. And they say, hey, I'm interested in teaching there. But what about smaller cities, Wuhan, right, Ningbo, China? These places also have very nice, wealthy communities that have nice international schools that need very good teachers, but they might not get the same draw that larger communities, more popular communities might get. So, Matt, I don't know. I don't want to contradict you because you are correct. You are totally correct. We're looking for people that have those 2 full years of experience, but if you have 1.5, a little bit more, and you think that it's kind of questionable, and you think the school might be interested in you, I would still apply with us. Would you agree, Matt?
Absolutely. And James, just to mention one last thing, we have, for example, a private school group, education group, for example. They have multiple private kindergarten and elementary students in English. It's full English immersion classes for these students. So it's just small private schools, and they go up to around grade 5. So they cap off with those type of age students, and they really focus on, for example, science and maybe math or maybe an art class too. So for those of you who enjoy a specific subject, for example, if you're certified to teach history, you're certified to teach a specific subject, but you might not have the experience, you can have the opportunity to teach perhaps your subject, maybe not in your content area with age, but if you're like, hey, I'm an art graduate, just a regular liberal arts art degree, I'm excited. I'm excited to hopefully teach that. There are schools that have rotation classes. It's not just all ESL guys. There are many of our schools do have opportunities to teach the kids cooking classes, geography, math, science, but they are on a small scale, and they are teaching on a rotational scale, so rotating classes each day, and you might teach maybe one geography class each day if you're the geography teacher. Maybe a teacher next door is the science teacher. He teaches science for 30 or 45 minutes a day. So you do have those types of opportunities. But on a larger scale, to be only that science teacher, it's very difficult unless you have the 2 years in your content area. So we hope
Matt?
that answers your question. You want to jump to the next one with Matt? Matt has a really nice question there.
Matt has a question for you, Matt. He says, I'm in an international relationship, UK and American. Can we apply and be placed together?
So that's great. So Matt, you are in a you'd be surprised actually of all the different types of candidates that we get that do have spouses, people they're in relationships with from different parts of the country. The big question that schools would ask, are both of those candidates from a native English-speaking country so we can legally obtain them a teaching visa or a work visa? So the answer for you seems to be yes. And so you can definitely apply to be placed together. It's always a great question because couples always say, can we live together? Can we be placed at the same school? So I always recommend that, well, first of all, the answer is yes, you can definitely apply together. The second thing, can you live together? Yes, you can live together. However, one person will probably have to commute further if you're not placed at the same school.
It depends on if they're working at a real school, like an international school, or if they're just working at an ESL academy. So maybe discuss that as well.
Yeah, so international schools, if you're being placed at an international school, first thing a school would say, do we have positions that both, if you both have specific content areas that you're teaching, or do we have positions open? So that's the first thing they'll look at. If you're looking to teach ESL, just having a great year abroad, maybe it's your first time teaching, we will say to you, and our schools will say, we'll do the best we can to place them together, or they might say, hey, we just have one position at this time, and then us as recruiters will do our best to, with our Chinese team, with our Korean team, to get you placed in the same neighborhood. So, no, you will not be placed 4 hours away from one another. You will be placed close. You can live in the same house. But I will tell you guys out there, Matt especially, you need to learn how to be a gentleman and have the further commute and let your significant other have a nice short commute to school. Okay? So as long as you're okay with that, that's usually how the cookie crumbles. So glad you understand that, Matt. So hopefully that that answers your questions. On to the next one there, James.
Yeah. So Emily asked a follow up. She said, you mentioned that, or maybe not follow up. You mentioned that applicants with no experience in teaching can be placed in second and third tier cities in China. What are some examples, Emily? I hope that you saw my chat message to you there. First tier cities that refers to the big four cities. You might not recognize a couple of those. In fact, Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen. Right? Guangzhou and Shenzhen, they're very large cities. I actually always thought they were provinces, but now I know that they are cities. Second tier cities. You can see I listed a few. I already discussed a few: Chengdu, Wuhan, Chongqing. Third tier, Hangzhou, Chongqing is in both of those. I have to check that. But those are just a few example names if you actually know the cities, and you want to kind of get some perspective on what first, second, and third tier means. But you are specifically asking, if I have no experience, can I get a job in a second or third tier city? Matt, I think the answer is yes, right? After everything we've been saying, we've been kind of implying it. Is our final answer yes on this? I'm gonna say
yeah. So we imply it because there is the opportunity. Guys, of course, nothing is guaranteed, but they are. The short answer is they are more flexible and they are more willing, because as James alluded to before, it is more challenging to get teachers to come to these cities that might be not as desired as the Shanghais and the Beijings. So we would just ask you if you're a flexible teacher and we're not going to place you in an unsafe location. All these cities are very busy for the most part and do have a lot of things happening and a lot of exciting opportunities in and outside of school. But you would have to be more flexible as a person if you really wanted to teach your subject area and you really wanted us to help you search for and present you with an opportunity in those types of cities in your area of study.
And then the final question was from Jeffrey. He said, do these international schools also hire ESL teachers?
So that's an interesting question. Question. So the international schools do hire ESL teachers, Jeff, but a big thing is that they need these teachers to be certified just like any other K through 12 subject teacher is certified. And here's an example: having 4 years of study as an ESL education major, having 2 years as a master's program in country, 2 years of study, not just a quick online class. So they will hire ESL teachers as well at international schools. The answer is definitely yes, definitely yes. Some schools are different though. Some schools will invest just as much in an ESL teacher that has great experience, a great education and certifications. However, some schools, for example, our school in Vietnam, they do a lot of their ESL hiring in country. So they do seek to hire K through 12 subject teachers that are certified in specific subjects and perhaps more challenging to find. And then they take a lot of applicants that are in country, perhaps have an online master's of education degree that took a while to complete. So I hope that answers your question as well. They do hire ESL teachers as well. So James, it looks like we have a couple follow-ups. You want to start with Matt real quick?
We have one final follow-up. We've actually gotten through everything. I know we're kind of going around the place, but Matt had one more. He said, you know, I have a degree from a top university and a certification in a content area, but I don't have 2 years of teaching experience. Does my certification and good degree, does that preclude the need for a teaching for 2 years of experience?
So the schools really do they want this experience.
Yeah.
So the answer is it really doesn't. It really doesn't, because these schools will look and see. They're always looking. Do you have the 2 years of experience? For example, you're saying specifically, so a degree from a top university. Matt, it would probably be helpful if you actually wrote that university name in, just so we can kind of give you quick feedback. So if you have a Columbia degree,
I bet they would, dude. I bet they would. I bet they would.
No, I mean, the answer is from all of our schools is no, they wouldn't.
I guess I'm not referring to an international school. Sorry, I was thinking as you were talking about an international school. Let me talk about New Pathway after you talk about it.
Exactly, because that's a great follow-up. So Matt, yeah, if you're looking to teach an international school and say, hey, you know, my degree is in psychology, you know, I want to teach AP psychology. Well, the first thing our schools would say, are you a certified social studies or a psychology, you know, state certificate to teach that subject, or you know, do you also have the 2+ years of experience teaching that at a school in the States? And then James has a great follow-up for schools that specifically seek Ivy League graduates. James, go for it.
Yeah, I'd say that if you're looking to teach a specific subject, by the way, go ahead, type that subject in if you'd like, if you want to, Matthew, just so we know exactly what it is. But if you're looking to teach a specific subject at a real school, you do need those 2 years of experience. However, if you're interested in teaching at secondary English, well, I will say this: if you're secondary English, we do have a couple places that would love you, especially one employer we work with in China that has multiple branches. Matt, where do they work again? I think.
Yeah, it's actually an American program.
Go ahead, you tell.
And they actually have they have branches in Shanghai, Shenzhen. They're in the process right now of an early fall start open, I should say, in Hong Kong as well. So most of the positions are in Shanghai, Beijing. They also have, I also mentioned Shenzhen, Chengdu, and Jinan.
Yeah, and there's a lot. There's a lot. And basically you're not going to be teaching English classes per se, correct, Matt? Because you're from Columbia and you have a secondary English certificate, they would love you. Let me just say that up front. They would love you to death. And they would want to hire you at any cost in one of their cities. I think that would, perhaps one of their smaller cities that they have a good relationship with their local security bureau, which in China is the equivalent of an immigration office somewhat. And so if they have a good relationship with that security bureau, that local branch of the school, then they might be able to say, hey, well, he only has 1 year of experience, something like that. Can we please get him in?
Yeah.
It's more relationship based. That's what all of this is. When we're talking about maybe you can get this, it depends on the size. It's all about relationships over there, and that's what we're referring to in this situation.
Well, yeah, Matt, if you're saying, hey, I really want to work at an international school, it doesn't matter. Actually, because I'm sure you'd appreciate, us being straightforward.
Yeah.
They wouldn't make an exception if you have just an English degree from Columbia. These schools would take a teacher from a small teaching college with the 2 years, with the secondary English ed degree, over yourself. So just being very straightforward, and it's just like a school in the States. However, what James was saying about this specific company that has many branches and they're fantastic, their HR coordinator is actually out of New York and the Philadelphia area. They look for candidates from top 25 universities, and they have very dynamic positions, mentoring positions. They have middle school English language arts positions. They have a debate program coordinator. They have admissions counseling positions.
And actually, there's another place in Korea that has an admissions counseling kind of SAT prep. Both of these places in Korea and China, both these companies, these clients that we're referring to right now, they both have a lot of SAT prep positions. So Matthew, when we get in touch with you, if that's something you're willing to consider, let us know. But anyways, we'll continue to focus on something that you might prefer to teach with a secondary English certificate.
All right. Well, I guess, guys, we really appreciate you last few guys hanging on and asking a lot of questions, and we hope this was informative. If we will be following up with all you to see what opportunities you're looking for. If you have any questions in the meantime, don't hesitate to ask us.